Hello, my name is Damaris and I'm going to present evidence number 3. The important events from the last 3 decades. First, it was the fall of the Berlin Wall and the German reunification. This happened on October 3 of 1990. East and West Germany were brought together again. They had been formed after the World War II. After the dissolution of the USSR, reunification negotiations could begin, and the West was in favor of doing so, but the East was not. It was now legal to cross to the other side after a series of negotiations. The Berlin Wall was dismantled by a jubilant public. Reunification meant a period of economic disparity between the halves of the new Germany that led to a slowed economic growth in the recent years. This video shows the process of the political negotiation of the reunification of Germany and how people were demanding that it had to be done because families had to be together again. It is really interesting and gives us an insight of what it really felt like. The event number 2 is the Commonwealth of Independent States being created in December of 1991. Leaders of Russia, Ukraine, and Belarus signed an agreement to form a new association to replace the crumbling USSR. They had an interaction on the basis of sovereign equality. 2 years later, they created an economic union. This was a common economic space for the free movement of goods and services. The members of the CIS are Russia and the 11 other republics that had been formerly part of the Soviet Union. This is the list of the countries, and here I bring a video that talks more about the history of the formation of this arrangement of countries and how it developed throughout the years. Event number 3, NAFTA is established on 1992. NAFTA stands for North American Free Trade Agreement. It establishes a free trade zone in the countries of Canada, the United States, and Mexico. It took effect on January 1st of 1994. The consequences of this type of arrangements is that lifted tariffs of the majority of goods were made, and on the long run, it calls for the gradual elimination of most of the remaining barriers to the investment and movements of goods and services among the 3 countries. This video explains further how this transaction of goods and services is being made better. Event number 4, the emergence of English as the world language in the past decades. Europe was rebuilding itself after the happenings of the world wars. The government and the population needed a time for recovery. Meanwhile, the US was booming. Its culture, its political ways, the economy was rising so fast. Examples of this progress are seen in the emergence of rock and roll, jazz, and later hip-hop. We can see also the positive impact it made on the world in the Hollywood movies. It radiated confidence that was needed by the world. Now, advertisers for multinational companies use English because they want to keep their message consistent across markets and across nations. Bands and filmmakers do the same to reach a larger audience. More people know the language, so more people can see it. English is the language of technological revolution and of new developments such as the internet. It helps us to have better means of having a successful career. It is also noted to say that English is the dominant or official language in 75 territories. A negative effect of this development of English is that native languages and cultures have been pushed to near extinction by this language. I bring a video that talks about interviews that are made on the streets to people, and they ask them if English is that important to globalization, why should they learn English, and actually this whole video is in English. It shows the popularity of the language and how people really think it is to speak the language, the benefits it has. Event number 5 is acts of terrorism in the 21st century. Advancements in both science and technology have negative repercussions. You can see this in the terrorist attacks that leave a number of deaths and physically injured people, along with a great psychological damage on the population in general, and specifically on the ones that were affected. This video is about an analysis that is made of how the plane hit the building in the 9/11 attack. It is really interesting to see and gives a good insight of how the tactics were made to make this attack. Here I bring some attacks on these past years from terrorists. The first one is the assassination of Benazir Bhutto. It was in 2007. She was the Prime Minister of Pakistan, and she was shot while campaigning. After so, a suicide bomb was detonated. The July 7 of 2005 London bombings were a series of coordinated suicide bomb attacks in London. It used a public transport system, and it is the first ever Islamic suicide attack in England. These other 4 terrorist attacks are the Istanbul bombings in 2003. This is an image from the event. The New Delhi bombings in 2005, 2 years later. The Madrid train bombings were made in 2004, and this one is one of the attacks that left most injured, 1,800. One of the most popular and known is the 9/11. Many important U.S. landmarks were attacked by hijacked airliners. Here I talk about some definitions. Globalization is the tendency of investment and business being moved beyond domestic and national markets into the world market. There is international trade and cultural exchange. Goods and services, as well as social and cultural influences, are gradually becoming similar. Terrorism is that criminal acts, even against civilians, are made with the purpose of provoking a state of terror in the general public, or to make a government and or an international organization to make or not make something. The unipolar world is when one dominating state holds a significant amount of power in the economic, military, and political terms. It is held by a country alone. The digital era is a period of advancement in technology that is started by the digital revolution during the 1980s, and it is still ongoing today. Connections between the events listed and the terms. The fall of the bilingual and the consequent German reunification are consequences of the dissolution of the Soviet Union. It marks the end of the Cold War. The remaining power was the United States, and it led to a unipolar world, where the U.S. influences other countries and helps the development of globalization and digital technologies. The second one is the NAFTA establishment that brings advantages to each country but also has negative effects on the inner markets. The country's own products will be less demanded by its citizens. Next is the CIS creation. It created an economic bloc that promoted interdependence between the nations and contributed to the further development of globalization. English as a world language is a direct effect from the unipolar world we live in. It is a dominant or official language, and it affects the way globalization and digital advances are done. It shapes on other cultures as well. Terrorism attacks are made in response to these processes of globalization and of political and economical changes. We will talk about it later. Why did globalization emerge? Because of improved trade and transport, increased labor and the growth of multinational companies, improved technology, the development of the internet, the development of global trading blocs that reduce national borders, and tariffs, such as the European Union and NAFTA. What causes the terrorist attacks of the 20th century? First, I would like to talk about socialism of the 20th centuries. Terrorists justified violence in the name of it, because socialism was a way of solving the injustice made in the capitalist societies. But some people thought violence was necessary as well. In the 50s and 80s, nationalism was a cause. Suppressed populations were now committing violence against states that had not given them a political voice. They were rebelling from an oppressive rule. And from the 1980s to today, there are religious justifications. For example, with the civil rights era and Western people were fearful of a world where minorities and women were gaining freedom and more rights. Also in the Middle East there was a swing towards conservatism, because when men that work in the Persian Gulf returned home, they found women assuming their jobs. Religious conservatism took hold, and there was a sensibility to all the situations that led to terrorism. How does the end of the Cold War relate to the unipolar world? Well, the Cold War was a period of mutual challenge between the two superpowers, and when the Soviet Union collapsed and ended this period of war, the superpower left was the US, which exerted its influence across the world and can still be seen today. It is said, however, that it has been losing its power gradually as other possible superpowers arise. Lastly, how has the digital era influenced today's society? Technology has affected all spheres of human interaction: work, education, interpersonal relations, production of goods and services. Depending on the era we focus, there are pros and cons to each one. As examples of areas of influence are education. We have wider access to information of all kinds. We have improved communication, social networking, new forms of entertainment that also can can have a can make us be more productive and not at the same time. Agricultural processes and medical advances can be seen in this period of the digital era. Business cost efficiency is improved, but there is less value in the human workers. Dependency on technology has negative effects. It makes people less self-reliant and makes distraction and memory issues a problem in the society. This is the content of my evidence number 3. I hope I had been clear enough, and I had these videos across the slides that I would like you, teacher, to see. I hope you like them. I also sent the presentation for you to see the videos, and I wish you the best. Goodbye.